As Chris Rego, and I'll be going over how to use the DAX formatter code that I was able to put together. So, using same sort of logic as the Power Query formatting code that I had, I was able to kind of figure this out. So, hopefully, this makes sense. So, I'm going to make a garbage power pivot measure. It's using this table, and I'm just going to. You would never really do this, but just to kind of show that it can format, I'm just going to make a very down and dirty measure. So new measure, and I'm just going to call this, I don't know, example measure. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want you to calculate a count rows where, and on this table, it's called query folding. And filter on name equals 8 from. And I'm going to put a second filter in there. Supports query folding equals false. So it's all one line. It's not formatted at all. It's basically, I just got to clean this up real quick here. So it's not formatted at all. It's all one line. It's not really super readable, but it works. So I'll go and make this a whole number. So see this, you need this reformatted. Is it okay? If I go to manage measures, I have a couple other like very simple ones in there, right? So now let's go into Visual Basic to show the code and see how this works. I go to data, get data. Actually, data, get data. It's like I'm going to Power Query. I'm going to go to Developer, Visual Basic. And this is basically the code. So let me kind of pull this out over. The first one really just takes in a couple parameters: the name of the measure, and then the formula, which is the DAX formula. How this all works together: there's three pieces of code, and the first piece implements it. Reformat DAX it loops through all your measures in your model, in your Power Pivot model, passes the name in, passes the formula, and then it calls daxformat.com, which is put out by the SQL BI guys. And it adds the parameters onto the URL, gives it the formula, and then basically passes that over, sends it as a GET request, and then takes the response here, passes it to this function, right? Actually, at this point, passes it to this function. So it takes the response, passes it to this function, and it takes the formatted response, which is the reformatted DAX from the HTML response. And then that's pretty much it. And then once that happens, it rewrites it as the new formula. So this is the main formula that calls everything. And all it does is it loops through every model measure using VBA for each model measure and model measures, basically looping through. The formula equals, and then calls and reformats it, and it just resets it to the new reformatted DAX formula. Once you kind of get it, basically this calls this last one, reformat DAX calls this one, and at this last step, all this does is it goes to this function and it says, okay, out of this HTML, give me the reformatted DAX. So it's kind of like a daisy chain, but it all works. So really, you could take this piece right here, throw it on a button in Excel, works just fine. So without further ado, I hit run, and it just ran. And when I go to Power Pivot, measures, manage measures, and I edit, voila, it's all formatted correctly, or much better than what it was. It's not one line anymore. So that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward. The only other thing that you have to do, I think I pointed out in the blog, is I have a bunch here, but if you go to tools, tools, references, I think there's two that you have to do, and it's HTML object library, I think is one. Then the other one is the WinHTTP services version. I think the most latest version you have at mine is 5.1. And this is the one that basically calls the API, and then the HTML object library is the one that does the parsing and gets you the formatted DAX. That's all I got. Thank you.